Recording, chaps.
Evening, guys. Thanks for joining me again. So I think this is the third or fourth conversation in the Coach's Corner for UBRFC. This evening, we were going to have a chat about our coaching philosophies, what we coach, why we coach, how we coach, our influences, our successes, our failures, our learning, the general enjoyment of it all within the university program. So I guess as the man who kicked us all off, and I could probably go anti-clockwise here for me as well, with Shane joining me first and then Si and Slimmy. When I landed at the university, I recognised that there was no real style of play. I also recognised that there was a pretty old school playbook being used, still effective. So full credit to the guys, but effective at the right times. And my view and my vision on rugby is based around providing an environment, followed by the skill sets, the knowledge, the game understanding, the passion and energy to help players express themselves and really gel, bond, and enjoy playing rugby as much as possible. So the idea was to try and give the guys a metaphor, a symbol, a model for the club to work through. And the person who influenced me and stood out with this one just from watching a movie, coincidentally, and then doing some background reading was actually Bruce Lee. So I started implementing with Shano Jeet Kune Do rugby, which was based on Bruce Lee's martial art and his evolution of Kung Fu, which he took to Jeet Kune Do, which is about flowing movement and acting when needing to act and using the right tool at the right time. So whether in a martial art it was kicking or punching or throwing, is the same in rugby. So the idea was to create an environment and create a coaching philosophy and a game plan and a skill set and all these things around the idea that we want to upskill the guys to the point where they could make decisions. The players had ownership of what we were doing, what they were doing on the pitch. And if they saw that there was a need to kick, they kicked. If they saw there was a need to break a line through a pass or running, then they went for it. The idea was that we provide them with frames to manipulate the defense and change the picture within a frame. And then if the picture didn't change or the defense was that good that they couldn't change it, they would move to another part of the pitch. And of course, they would have the skill set, the energy, the knowledge, to be able to try and do something again in that next part of the pitch, change the picture, use the right tool, use the right weapon to manipulate the defense and get an outcome that they wanted. So Shane and I went about implementing that, and I think we went very skill heavy and very technically focused, didn't we, Shane, when we first started?
Yeah.
Because the skill sets of the guys was actually quite low. And the reason we did that, that Shane and I in particular drove that, was based around the need to move the ball. We don't have big squads. We don't have big players at UBRFC. We've never really attracted monsters like a USW or a Swansea or a Hartpury or an Exeter, a front five that is so dominant that you can just carry straight and bash people out the way. We've never had that. And even if we did have that, I don't think we'd coach too differently. We might use them in a more effective way, but yeah, we went about a lot of repetition. So there's a bit of science behind it, which I can come back to if you're interested, guys. But there's a lot of technical work. What are your first memories of those early pre-seasons, mate, and how it's evolved in terms of our coaching philosophy and our strategy with the guys?
Well, I think like you say, we were quite surprised that some of the fundamental skill level was much lower than I think we were expecting from guys who had played high pedigree rugby they might have won the Daily Mail Challenge, or we had guys with on their CV that they've been in real winning sides, but fundamentally there was quite a lot missing. And I think that's probably, and with our background, mine and yours background of mentoring, aspiring players, and that knowing the value of those developing the technical elements and fundamentals, I think that's where we focused it. A lot of our energy to give them the tools to express themselves and play the game we wanted, because it's all very well and good standing in a shape where you've got 5 options, but if you can't execute the pass, then it's no use. So you've got to arm those players really with those fundamentals, I think, before we could go anywhere.
Absolutely. And I think that was said, I mean, the best example of that was going to Bath away in one of our biggest fixtures. Back then, it would have been the Super Rugby side, wasn't it, Bath, from our first game?
At the Rec.
So,
Yeah.
and that was just through sheer repetition, technical development of it. Si, how have you found it coming into this? Because obviously it's evolved, and I think one of the biggest evolutions of this is the leadership groups, which we've spoken about before, and the players getting to be a bit more accountable for their playbook and how they train as well as play. And so I think we've actually moved a lot more into gamification, and with the skills being interlinked within it and including fitness and things in there as well. How have you found it when you came in?
Yeah, I mean, from when I came in, again, going back into grassroots, the physicality of grassroots rugby is strong. So, you know, guys would rely on their physicality more so than the skill set, you know, and then people would forget that a little bit at grassroots rugby in some senior teams and maintain the sort of the physical side of it. We're coming into the university and you haven't got that, you know, guys at 18, 19 haven't got quite that physical strength yet. Then you need to work on those other skills. And I think, you know, that's important. Interesting what you said about you have to work on those basic skills. That is still, I think, fundamental even at grassroots. You've got to work on those core skills. You'll see players who go through life playing rugby still can't pass off the left hand. You know, Slimmy. You know, and you know,
there's ways around it.
but there's things,
no way around.
But there's things like that. So you've got someone who can play the game, and that's fine, depending on where they want to go, but they won't ever go to a different level. They won't challenge themselves by going for a different level. So I think those skills are essential, but then it comes down to the individual wanting to keep practicing those skills, you know, at home, with their mates, with their buddies in their houses. And that's huge. And then the next thing for me really is that game understanding, that game management, that playing the game in your head, like you would do in gamification, like in terms of video games. You're playing the game as you go, and you're thinking about levels, you're thinking about things ahead when you're playing a video game. That is a game of rugby. You know, you're playing the game within the game. You know, and we need more players to think like that, to think about the next phase, 2 phases down the line, where we're trying to go to, what's our game plan, what's our vision, and reading the picture. You mentioned then about trying to change the picture. We need to have more players thinking about the picture is always changing and what happens next. So you can't be regimental, right? My job is this, then I'm doing this. Wherever position you play, you have to keep thinking of the next play, the next picture. And I think for us, it's been one of my learnings is understanding what players can do that, and can we get all players thinking like that? Can we get all players thinking like that? Even though it's not the days of right, leave it up to the 8, 9, and 10. That's gone. You know, that's gone. We need thinkers. We need, you know, and even, you know, I mean, we need everyone thinking about the game as we play it. And those chats, those conversations, we've talked about it in training, haven't we? Sort of micro communication all the time is essential. And one of the biggest things that I've found is we're so quiet. So quiet. As university rugby is so quiet to where I've come from, where it's loud, it's abrasive, it can get nasty.
You think that's a knowledge thing, though? I think we've discussed this in part as well, is that not all of them are fans of rugby like we are. You know, there's different types of players, isn't there? And we found that a lot of them don't watch many games, a lot of them don't get involved in doing their homework and the analysis and stuff. And so the lack of knowledge means they don't feel confident. They haven't learned everything that we need them to learn to a point. So we actually, we try and give them an alternative, don't we, in terms of either the gym work or speed or the skills, so that they can get away with not knowing it, and therefore their lack of communication still appears.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. And also maybe the fact that they're not, I don't know, asking each other. I mean, you know, sometimes I can remember, you know, I didn't quite get a play from a certain coach, and actually rather than go and ask the coach, I go and ask my mates and say, sorry, look, you know, I'm not quite sure. Can we just, in the garden, can we run through it a little bit? Just those kind of little connections. And then they'll probably learn more from each other than they would do from repetitively from us all the time. So for me, it's that game understanding, game knowledge, just being aware of the game at all times. And that's for me is how can we adapt? How can we get players at all levels through the club thinking about the game, loving the game? And there's guys there who I believe do love the game, but it's very much a case of, right, it's Monday night, Wednesday play, and that's it. Right, forget about it until, and I get it with academic studies and other things going on in life, but play the game in your head.
But that's one of the challenges we've set ourselves as a coaching team, like we're true to our philosophy. We want to develop a style of play and players who can play that way and enjoy playing that way. Whereas some coaches, it's very hard to coach. It's very hard to get transfer into a game, that reading, game management. Like I say, it's really hard. So a lot of coaches resort to high levels of repetition and highly prescriptive game plans. I mean, we know the successful sides, the Exeters, the Hartburys, and we know exactly what Exeter are going to do when they get the ball. All you have to do is stop it, and so do they. And literally across the first 5 teams, they all do the same thing. They will do the same thing in the same scenario every time, and it's incredibly effective.
And that's the interesting thing.
It doesn't suit our philosophy.
But you think how we started that? We started with that, and we were successful. And then we've actually evolved into the game thing. And we've got a question as a coaching team: should we go back to that, or are we doing the right things with game understanding and decision making with that?
You're right.
We have clear framework though.
We do, but one thing that the other teams do have, and we all know it, and the lads know it, is they have that physical edge of getting over the gain line. If you get over the gain line in rugby, it's a lot easier to play rugby if you're over the gain line.
All things are possible.
It's exactly, and if you're struggling to get over the gain line, then you've got to think about other things of what to do, whether it is a kicking strategy or whatever, what kind of things you're trying to do. But if you're not over the gain line, then it makes it a lot harder. And those teams, and Exeter, because I can see it in my head now, replaying it, they were always over that gain line. Front football is key. We know it. We talk about it. But if it all depends where we want to go. Now, it's great to see some of the guys, or actually all the guys, doing their gym work, doing their running. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. Rugby now, and I say this now when I'm out, even at grassroots, if you don't train for rugby, you get beaten up, you get hurt, and that's that shitty level 11. If you don't do some training, you will get hurt. And this is true. And if you don't train properly for rugby, you are going to get hit. Not back in my day, you can have like 10 pints on a Friday night and run out and have a worldie. Not anymore. Those days are gone.
Is that your secret success?
His name dropped already.
He always does.
It's 10 minutes in, he's already said he played for Bristol.
No, I didn't. Not tonight. Not tonight.
But can I just say, these clubs though, these Exeters and Hartburys, etc., they in their mindset, it's almost attack the person, don't they? They attack a man where we attack the space effectively in the mindset, and their initial mindset is person. It is. It was me when I played. It was just look for someone and run at him, and then hope that goes over the gain line. Then you get ball. But we don't, do we? We look for space, and we look for attacking that space more than they do. I know they do.
Jimmy, how have you found it? So the most recent addition to the coaching team. How have you found the planning, the understanding of the system? So we were in a 1-3-3-1, then we moved to a 2-4-2 pod system last year. We'll move back to 1-3-3-1. We talk about our launch plays and getting that momentum. We talk about our field targets, our principles of play, how we try to create frames and manipulate space to be able to then talk about creating overlaps and counting, our counter-rucking. You've come into all of this in a very short space of time. Yeah. Shane and I have evolved it over 5 seasons now. Si's done 3 seasons. So how have you found it? How have you found the whole coaching process? And have you enjoyed it? Have you found it difficult at times?
No, I've hated every minute of it. No. It really turns me on, this sort of stuff, though. Do you know what I mean? And it always has, and I've always sort of understood it. I only get showed once, and I get it. And I see what what people do, and we did formations back in my day, even though it was that long ago. The challenge is getting it across to those development players, what I call development players. From that performance, those two teams, and it's getting them down. The problem is you get fewer and fewer people understanding it and getting it, quickly as you go lower across the club, and that's that's really obvious. I've found, in the fours you might get 3 or 4 that completely understand it, and everyone else is following them. Do you know what I mean? Where in the first you've got 17, 18 blokes who get it and they go off and do it. So that's the challenge that it has. I love it, especially when it pulls off. I think it's just got to be simpler as you work further down the club, isn't it? It has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will never work. And what worked really well in those lower teams last season is the simple framework of what we do and where we play in certain parts of the field. You know what I mean? When we're in the 22, we aim to do gigs. When when we're in our 22, we aim to clear the ball. I know it's not completely black and white but we got that in early and people understood, and that framework, it gives people the chance to express themselves as well. It doesn't just completely turn them into a robot. It allows those players with a bit of sperm to go out and do something different, really. But,
on that, it's good. You're right, and I think looking at our philosophy and the our game vision and plan, it's so exciting for me. It's such an exciting environment to be in, but you've got to be open. You've got to be open to grasp it, grab it, learn from it, and go from it, because it is fun. The style of rugby we play, it's fantastic. It's an unbelievable style of rugby. It's inventive. Not that many university sides do what we try and do. But you've got to be open and say, do you know what? Maybe I might struggling at the start, a few weeks in pre-season, but I want to get this because this is a great way to play rugby. Yeah. And then our key thing, embrace it. But our key thing, and then I've been, as you guys been already on these webinars over the last lockdown, is the ability for us to make training and make the environment, and it captures learning in all ways where it's. The players can still have fun, still enjoy it, but there's got to be learning taking place. And us in our performance, that is a non-negotiable, that we need learning to take place. And we understand it. We're all aware of learning develops in different stages, but we've got to get that message across that it's a learning environment. And that message has to come down through the club. When we go training, we want to make it fun. We want guys to have fun and enjoy themselves. But it's learning. We want guys to be better rugby players when they leave Bristol University.
That brings me on to perfectly the kind of stuff I've been fortunate to spend time with Mark Bennett and PDS Systems, which I brought into the club in a kind of filtered way. I didn't bring in Mark and the way he does things, bash, and it's a very effective system, unbelievably effective in many environments. But I didn't believe it would work completely with our lads, and so we kind of watered it down slightly. Shano, do you want to just give your experience of how you've used the rule of 3 and how we've evolved it with the players and the benefits of it?
Yeah, rule of 3 it's an empowerment tool, isn't it? It's really trying to empower everybody, and I think with some of the barriers to that, I was going to say on what we were talking about earlier, is if you get a player who's come from a highly prescriptive environment into our sort of more, into our freestyle Jeet Kune Do style environment, it can take quite a while to adapt, and also to get over the hierarchy system. So actually, I have the right to speak, and I've got the right to say what I want to say.
Yeah.
I love the rule of 3 when it's working really well. I think they're really important that you have that acknowledgement. I don't know how we're going to do that tap with social distancing now. We might have to do a little air high five or something like that. But that little process of, I say something, you acknowledge it, we move on, and then as a coach, you can look for the adaptations and the changes. I think it just is really, really valuable, incredibly valuable coaching tool. And it takes some facilitating there to get the guys to use it properly.
Slimmy, obviously down at the development level with it, how have you found the rule of 3? Because I know it's been a bit more of a challenge. Certainly, I think Si, Shane and I would be honest and say we haven't hammered it enough. That first thing is, just to get clarity on it, it's number one, you own your errors and you own your success as well, which is important. Two, if you don't know something, you go and ask someone for help, or they should be then helping you if they something they can help with. So that's the connection, leadership side of things. And then thirdly, the coach will step in and question, freeze the session, challenge the guys as to why something has happened. Was it a positive or negative outcome? Was it up to our standards? There's a bit more detail and framework around that, but that's it in a nutshell. How have you found that with the development groups within the club to drive that ownership?
Yeah, again, it's a little bit harder, just like I was saying earlier, you're getting past 1 and 2 much quicker than you are in the first and second teams. And that's purely because it's down to leaders, isn't it? You need leaders effectively to help drive that. And it's one of those tools, isn't it? It's a brilliant tool to use, but the essence of it is for us to step back a bit and allow them to, take ownership.
We're the accountants, aren't we?
Yeah.
Our job is to keep them on track. And that's why I think we found it difficult, because we don't always want to be the bad guys and keep going stop, question and challenge. Yeah. You've got to get the guys to do that and question, have they done it? Have you been accountable? Have you shown that learning is taking place? Yeah,
but the irony is actually, because we're trying not to do as much, we actually are doing more, because we're doing that rule of 3 and we're pushing it forward. But actually, you're doing more, even if you're not doing anything, at that time. It's an unusual one, but it's brilliant. But the lads that get it, that understand that they've got to start work it themselves, if not, or help their teammates. Those are the lads that are going up to the first and seconds, and that's because they're understanding it, they're understanding the game, they're understanding the principles. So that's the challenge we have down in the development side, is that those kids that are getting it, those lads that are getting it, are probably moving up quicker than the others. So
So I got a question for you, because this is an interesting point, and it's a point that me and Jack Goody have been having a discussion for about 5 years. Is that point of intervention? Is when do you intervene? And I know the RFU are quite keen on letting things flow. And what do you feel about coach interventions? When does a coach come in on that rule of 3?
Well, RFU hat on. I mean, things have changed dramatically within the RFU in terms of coaching styles and methods and things like that, and they're coming more in line now in all the RFU coaching courses, is that empowerment of players. So becoming more of the facilitator of a coach. So those things are all falling into line, and they've done a lot of work with people like Stuart Lancaster and those kind of coaches. And so the RFU, we are steering down that road is empowerment. Gone of the days where
less intervention,
less intervention, and encouraging players to make and explore those mistakes, or explore the successes themselves, and then report back as a group, and then back to coaches. But I love it, and when it works, it's fantastic for players, coaches, everyone. But the difficulty of it is measuring it, because the measure of it potentially is longer. It can take longer for that, rather than the old system of tell, you will do this, you will do this. You can see instant results from that.
But the question is, the point is, does you see the instant result in that second, that moment?
In that second, but has learning taken place?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's where you've got to challenge them about consistency, and you've got to do learning checks within this as well, don't we? So we'll do something, and then 2 weeks later you'll throw it into a session, and you'll question, has that been learned, based on the quality of the outcome. So you're spot on. And
the irony is, at university we have less time with them than in a normal in a normal scenario.
And that is it. With what we're doing in our philosophy around our coaching and rule of 3, it is harder, because we only see the guys for a fraction of the time.
Maybe it's only 1 year.
Maybe 1 year.
If there's only 1 year that they're in that performance squad, it could be just 1 year. And
it shows the importance, though, of doing it lower down in the club, doesn't it? Because the first years won't, on the whole, 99% of them won't make it into the first team, the performance group. Yeah. So actually, with the coaches coming in, we've got a bigger challenge than ever right now, with the focus on building a sustainable pathway and a stronger depth in the university program, that these coaches have got to know the rule of three and the whole UAEs inside out, do the learning checks, the testing, the assessing, the accountability, getting to know the players. That's the key part of this as well, is one-on-one conversations is the most powerful tool out there still. We've all been doing mentoring within our coaching now, and it's still the most powerful. We've done shed loads of analysis that we do away from the guys and with the guys, but actually when you do it one-on-one with them and you break their game down and hold them accountable and ask them what they're seeing, why do they react that way, that's when it's just so powerful. And this process allows that. But key to that, again, is also having multiple coaches. I know our best sessions have been when you, for example, Shayna, would be running defense, keeping an eye on things. Si will be keeping an eye on things in attack. And then I can run in and do interventions and one-to-one conversations. And then you can start really challenging that learning. But also really interesting is how many more players want to own the session? How many get a voice through this process? And again, as you were just saying, Slimmy, is key that we implement this lower down and we get the guys accountable for what they're doing. And we have to be brave. We have to be far braver than we've been, again, to go, we're accepting failure and loss as teams. We're not telling them to do stuff to get it right. We're going to allow you to fail because we've got to go through this coaching process, because it's about learning and the outcomes.
And it's like that whole thing, innit? Any decision's better than no decision, effectively, is what we've got to come down to when we're pushing that rule of three. Because, you know, if people are then voicing up and making a decision, but actually it's probably not the wrong one, we need to let them go with it.
Yeah,
you're right. And on that, I mean, you know, I always say, you know, look at the performance. You know, really look at the performance. And we're in a performance environment, and that sometimes is not always about winning. Yes, we want to win, right? We always want to win, okay? But look at the performance. If we get the majority of the things right, then normally the performance and the result takes care of itself. Yeah. You know, but it's getting the performance right. It's getting the processes right, and getting the learning done, and then potentially, hopefully, you know, the score will take care of itself.
Have you been reading the Bible again?
Yeah. I've got it by my bed. There it is.
There's the Bible.
I've just got some money off Bill.
But interesting that as a group of coaches is what we sort of choose to measure. I remember there was a school team a few years ago had a massive success. I can't remember their name, and they didn't count tries, tackles, anything. All they counted was the amount of offloads.
Nice.
And this was their KPI, and they that's what they looked at, that's what they reviewed on, and they smashed. You know, they won every game for the year. And looking at what the stuff you put out for Bristol Rugby the other day, Jay, when I was reading about the number of passes that forwards make in for Bristol Rugby, and Connaught, wasn't it, when Pat Lam was at Connaught, and they had huge success. So their major KPI was how many successful passes did my forward pack execute. And when Connaught had that success, the front row threw more passes than any other front row in the league, and the same with Bristol. Now, so very, very interesting. That is what we would choose to measure, or maybe even ask the players, what would you choose to measure? Is it line breaks? Is it offload opportunities? Is it what is it chances where we took on a player offensively one-on-one? And I think we could probably be a little bit better at that and say, actually, let's focus on these ones and see what they tell us about the way we play.
Shane, you're right. You bang on. But if you peel it back a little bit, it has to go down as well. Because, again, we haven't got time. It has to be the ownership of players to go and do more. Because you can't say, right, let's try and get as many passes in. We can all talk about it. But then it's about going and doing it. You know, we only have a couple of sessions. But then it's the ownership of the group to say, right, we're going to do extras. You know, actually, who can go up the downs on a Thursday night and do extras without coaches? You know, we're going to do it ourselves. That's when you can start to see real performance and measure it. Because in the time frame we've got, we can't do all that. We haven't got enough time to do all that.
No, but I think it was on the point you said about, like, you always measure the performance and results takes care of itself. So it's kind of like having your KPIs, isn't it? So I remember I was working with the Bristol Rugby, the DPP, with the youngsters at like 14, 15. And we get them to give us a list of KPIs. You say, well, what do you want us to look out for? What do you think makes, you a good team?
Yeah.
What's going to make you a good team today? Is it the amount of line breaks? Is it the amount of passes, offload, or whatever it was? And then they would tell us as a group what they wanted to feed back on. And then at halftime, full time, or whatever, they asked us, and we'd give them the feedback on that particular point. And I just thought that was a really empowering sort of environment. Sure. And so it is. So if you're going to say we want to analyse the performance, do we need to be more specific about, okay, what is our KPI today? You know, or list the KPIs, 3 or 4. I don't know how many. How many do you want, or how many can you really absorb and be effective?
This also comes back to things I want to put in next year as well, around the players doing the opposition analysis and preparation of the game plan, and then players doing their individual analysis, reflecting on their performance. I think is a really powerful tool that we only scratched the surface of this season and previous seasons. And it again depends on the players. And the Maroon Scholars in particular will do a lot more of that this year to own their game, to take it to that next level. So yeah, really, really interesting, powerful stuff. Gents, we've probably got 30 seconds to wrap up here. So thanks ever so much again for your time and the conversation. Again, we could probably go for hours. So hopefully we will do many more of these. Lots of learning again, which is brilliant. Always thought-provoking. So thanks for your time and energy. I'll look forward to catching up again soon.
Bye.
Cheers, chaps.
Cheers, chaps.